Cecilia and Selma. This is maybe one of the most important sessions for me personally. After I lived in US and came back to Turkey, I built SDG Impact Accelerator, the first of its kind that has global ambitions to solve problems that are faced by refugees, misplaced people, displaced millions of populations. And I had a first close look on how Turkey and other countries are impacted globally. Turkey is hosting about 4 million refugees, more than 3 million Syrian, but there's at least 1 million other nationalities. And the crisis is not going to go anywhere, not in Turkey, not everywhere else. So I really, really value funds like UNICEF and people who are focusing on SDG improvement. So I'm really happy to be joined by people who knows a ton more than I do. So I'll just leave it to Cecilia and Selma to take us in how we're blending the world of impact that we need and the world of finance. So the floor is yours. Thank you. Sanna? Cecilia? Cecilia seems frozen.
Cecilia?
I think the screen has... Yeah, we can hear you. Sanna? Cecilia?
A minute, I'm just trying to get in touch with Cecilia.
Okay, no problem. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, Cecilia, can you hear us? Cecilia doesn't seem to be able to hear us.
She's not being able to hear us. I'm just checking if she has a presentation on her end. So I'm just waiting for her to see if she can.
Okay. So we have shifted to other platforms when this didn't work out. But if Anna is here, maybe Cecilia can leave and come back.
Yeah.
Or I can start with questions to Sanna when she can hear us, since she can hear us.
Yeah, she's just going to log back in and.
No problem.
Yeah.
So do you want to start mentioning what you guys are up to?
Yeah, for sure. So the Innovation Fund was actually created back in 2015, and we've been around now 5 years, and we've made 110 investments to date. And so you're going to hear more about the investments we've made and where we've made those investments and what it actually means to be able to apply for an Innovation Fund investment, because we do have some criteria that we look at. The countries we invest in are limited, so we only invest in about 156 countries, and Cecilia is probably going to share with you a little more on which of those countries are. We invest in open source technology, which is something that we consider extremely important and value a lot, because having open source tech is essentially what we take back as equity. We invest in the IP of the company. We do not, all our investments are equity free otherwise. We do not take a percentage of the company. It's essentially going through an open source goal that we look at. And we have, of course, had very fantastic use cases that have come about through the fund. And we'll also share with you a little bit more on that.
So from the SDG impact perspective, where do you see the financial sector and investments, direct investments to startup, playing a role going forward?
I think, especially even though the Innovation Fund is focused on children, we do have investments that happen across various SDGs. I don't think there's one SDG that I would say picks up more than the other. Even with relation to children, all SDGs do tie in and have a direct or indirect impact. And you'll see that across our investments, there's not just one SDG we're looking at. I think even the examples we'll be sharing with you across various SDGs. So be it limited to climate change or be it in relation to education, you'll see there's an equal balance in how we look at our investments.
Perfect. So I think Cecilia is back with us. Can you hear us, Cecilia?
Hi, Osan. I can hear you. I'm not sure.
Perfect. Good to have you
here.
We are very happy. I don't know if you were able to hear me, but I'm really excited about the presentation and how you're going to connect the private and like capacity building scaling perspective that startups have into real impact scaling. So the floor is yours. The screen looks nice. Take it away.
Thank you, San. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So I'm Cecilia, and today with my colleague Sanna from UNICEF Innovation, we'll be talking a little bit about the work we do at UNICEF. I know that many of you may be surprised to see UNICEF at a panel here today in a conference that talks about the future. I know probably everyone here knows UNICEF as an agency within the UN that works to protect the development and the growth of children around the world, and especially in low-income countries, or I hope you know us for that. And that's definitely the essential core of our mission and what we strive for. But there's a lot more we do around that. There's a lot we do considering the future of technology. And hopefully today, after our few minutes together, you'll be surprised if you do not see us in these kinds of places. So I'm going to talk, as I said today, about our team called UNICEF Innovation. So within our team, we work a lot around the use and the exploration. So we learn constantly and we create with frontier technologies for building like new and different things that add value to the mission of UNICEF. So before I move any further, I wanted to clarify what we refer to by frontier technology areas. I know it's something you've been hearing a lot throughout the different sessions at the summit. But as at UNICEF, we think about these frontier technologies as the kinds of technologies that overlap between $100 billion industries and more than 1 billion people needs. So what this means is that the kind of technologies that can positively impact a lot of people, but at the same time lie in financially sustainable markets that can allow them to have this financial sustainability for growing and scaling over time. So we constantly do a lot of research around the frontier technologies that are relevant that would help us attain our mission. And right now, because of that, there's 4 technologies that we particularly focus on, which are data science and AI, drones, extended reality, especially virtual and augmented reality, and blockchain. And around these technologies is that about 4 years ago, we started what is called the UNICEF Venture Fund, which again, it was quite an innovative structure and vehicle within the UN ecosystem 4 years ago, just because a venture fund, is pretty standardized, but in the private sector outside of the UN system. This was the first really venture capital vehicle within the UN and was built to learn from the private sector, to adopt some of the practices that they have, because we recognize that to basically pursue the very ambitious mission we have as UNICEF, as a UN agency to protect and support children, we needed more support. We needed this financial sustainability. We needed to use capital to fuel innovative solutions and learn from all of that. So that's how we created this $30 million fund that works on investing in frontier technologies to constantly support solutions that can create a better world. One thing that I wanted to highlight about the way we do things at the fund are the principles of innovation. I know, you see them on the screen, and I know they seem very straightforward, but not all of them are as straightforward as they seem. We at UNICEF, we've been doing this for 4 years, and during the process, we learned a lot. And one of the key things we learned about, of course, it's understanding the existing ecosystem. So we get a lot of applications for funding from the fund, and we constantly review applications. And of course, one key thing we look at is the technology and the prototype that they have. But we also want to see local teams solving local problems. You can build the best drone in Silicon Valley, but will it fly in Malawi? Like, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the truth is, there's much more than the product and the idea. When you apply it to a local ecosystem, you need to understand the stakeholders. You need to understand the governmental structure. You need to understand the local policies. You need to be able to work and take the most of that ecosystem to fuel your solution, as opposed to the other way around. So, of course, other than that, we focus in a lot of standardized things like designing with the users, being data-driven, and using this data to constantly prototyping and iterating on your solution and improving what you're doing to attain bigger results. But before moving forward, I wanted to highlight another principle of innovation, which is using open source. We exclusively invest in solutions that are building open source technology. And this is a key component to our fund, because we don't take any equity on the investments. And we basically consider this open source technology that is generated and that is made available to the world after our investments to be our equity. You have to think that as a UN, we want to invest in solutions that can grow and can scale, and we support them in that process. But if we invest in a solution that is early stage in Malawi, we want that solution to be as quickly as possible, be replicated, and we want that solution to grow in other places as well. So if that solution is going well, maybe we want to support the growth of that solution in Argentina. And this whole process is just much easier if the solution is made as open source, is made for other people to understand the software that they're building. Of course, there's many other benefits to open source, but because this is not an open source talk, I want to stop right there and just let you know that we consider this our equity. We think there's a lot of value in building these open source solutions, and we think that the impact that it makes in the world is just larger if we pursue that kind of approach. So basically what we do is we invest in very early stage solutions. The requirement at the stage of the investment is that they have a prototype. Basically, they come with very innovative and crazy visions of what they're going to build. We need something early stage that lets us believe that teams are going to build that. So this prototype is super important, not only if it's going well, but if it didn't go well. So like if you did do something, if you learned from that something, even if it didn't go well, if you change your solution because of that, all those things are super important in the process. And a lot of what we do in the fund is we work with the company to strengthen their solution and work on scaling these early stage startups into what we define as digital public goods. So specifically, what do we invest in? We invest in private companies, 100%. We don't invest in nonprofits. We don't invest in foundations. The main reason behind that is that a lot of the work we do with the companies is strengthen their business model. We want to insert some capital at an earlier stage, but we want to focus. We want to help them focus on a financial sustainable model that allows them to work independently of other people's funding. So that's why the private company method is super important for us to be there from the start. As I mentioned before, we only invest in open source solutions that have an existing prototype and can kind of indicate that this prototype helps us understand and believe what they're trying to build. And certainly we're UNICEF, so we are looking for solutions that have the potential to positively impact the lives of children. So that doesn't mean we have a lot of questions around this point. a lot of people think of UNICEF and think about solutions that impact children and think about schools and education, and we certainly work a lot around this area, work a lot in investing in solutions that have a very direct impact in children, but we also invest in solutions that may have a more indirect impact. For example, a drone that transports blood or medicines in a low-income community. So Sanna will give you a few more examples, a few more detailed examples for you to have an understanding of what exactly is it that we invest in. Another question that we get a lot is what do we assess at the time of reviewing applications? Of course, you can imagine we receive hundreds of applications every couple of months. And a lot of our team works on assessing these solutions, trying to make sure we choose the right people and the right teams for our investment. And here we highlighted not the only, but some of the 4 key main areas of assessment. And one is the problem solution fit. Surely, I think this is a thing that happens a lot with blockchain. We see a lot of blockchain applications that may not really need a blockchain like technology and may not really need the power of blockchain. So that is to say that reading an application where the team has a very clear understanding of what's the problem and has a very clear understanding of what the solution that they build is and why is that solution the best one to solve that problem, that's a key part of our evaluation. Of course, strength of the team is super important. There are a lot of teams, there's a lot of diversity in terms of like teams applications, but there's not always enough diversity in the same team. That is to say, we very much appreciate when we see teams that involve people from different gender, for sure, different skills, different backgrounds. What we've seen is, this complementation adds a lot of value. This complementation, this different kind of overseeing in the development of the project makes it very distinctive, as opposed to the intuition of naturally choosing team members that are very similar to oneself. So this diversity within the team is super valuable. But also understanding that the team is very aware of the local environment. As I said before, we invest in local solutions created by local people. And we want to make sure that these local people understand the area where they're working. Technical viability is definitely an important one. Understanding that the team surely has the skills to build a technical solution. But also understanding that it is possible to solve that problem with that technology, and they're the right people to do so. And as I said before, also the business plan, even if they don't have a concrete and an established business plan, it's all about the mentality that they had to begin with, knowing that they do want to be a financially sustainable business and that they're working on it. And as I said, we put a lot of emphasis in iteration here, because the key to growing and succeeding in a business is making sure you adapt in the environment and you create innovations within your organization to grow and scale. So one of the last pieces I wanted to share more about is what we call the UNICEF portfolio experience. So what happens after the selection? The selection is a process of approximately 6 months. So it's not precisely short. It allows us to do a lot of due diligence to pick the right solutions. But once the companies are part of our portfolio, what happens? So basically, they particularly stay in our portfolio for a year. And in this 1 year is that we very much support them super strongly to grow this prototype into a minimum viable product and further. So there's many components to this process. The team inside UNICEF Innovation has a lot of skills that are super relevant for the business at this stage. So we particularly have 2 areas of expertise. On one hand, the business background and the business like skills to help them think as a business. We see a lot of the technologies of the solutions we invest in that they come in with a technology mindset of being very focused in the technology, and we very much try to work with them to see this as a business that will be financially sustainable over time. So the business part is super important. The technology part is also super important. How can they improve their AI algorithm? How can they improve the time that the drone is flying on air? How can they improve the height? So like a lot of these factors are improved and advised on by all the technology experts we have inside our team. Other than that, as I said before, we have a lot of expertise on open source. So the expectation is not that solutions are open source before the investment necessarily. It may happen, and that's great, but that the solutions before through the investment period, they are building an open source technology. So we provide a lot of support and guidance in this area. We help them grow their open source communities and make the most of what this field has to offer. Other than that, there's, as you see on screen, there's a lot of other things we do, from using a lot of the strength of the United Nations and the branding we have, and that we allocate after this intense due diligence in the startups we invest in to support them to grow. So from giving them more visibility, from supporting them with product design, with UX, UI, to make their solutions more usable, really, for their users. And certainly by the end of the investment period, we put a lot of emphasis and focus in growth, in follow-on investors, and we collaborate with a lot of different funds and acceleration opportunities that can take the solutions at this stage. We kind of like end this 1-year investment period and support them further. Certainly after these 12 months, our engagement doesn't end. Once you are a UNICEF portfolio company, you kind of like always will be part of our alumni portfolio, and this is super important because opportunities keep coming. We do have 110 investments from more than 50 countries to date, but knowing the time, I'm just gonna stop right here, leave my colleague Sanna to explain a little bit more of what I was mentioning about the growth opportunities that we have for portfolio companies, as well as some examples that will give you a sense of the investments that we make. Sanna?
Thank you, Cecilia. I can now quickly walk you through a little bit on what happens after the companies graduate from the Innovation Fund. As Cecilia mentioned, our goal is, of course, to invest in these solutions and then scale the solutions that have the potential to maximize their impact. And to do this, UNICEF's Innovation Fund team connects these startups with our partners, our networks, accelerators, donors that are within the UNICEF network. And one of the pathways of growth that the startups graduating from the fund have taken is deploying their solution with UNICEF country offices. So they can be deployed in a UNICEF country office based in the country they're in, or scale to another country. And a quarter of startups that have graduated from the fund have in fact already piloted their solution with a UNICEF country office. And we'd also like to share that these startups have successfully raised $4.6 million in follow-on funding after having graduated from the Innovation Fund. Next slide. So another pathway of growth and to be able to get more funding is through additional funds or larger funds located within the Office of Innovation. One is the Growth Fund, through which we aim to make larger ticket size investments ranging from $200,000 to $400,000. And the second is the Crypto Fund. It's a newer vehicle allowing UNICEF to hold, receive, and disperse cryptocurrencies, while also exploring what it means to use digital finance and operate in a more digitally financed world. Going back to now some of the examples and the technology areas that Cecilia mentioned, I'm just highlighting a few quick examples from our portfolio. In Mexico, we've invested in Pitchstring Studios, which is a game-based learning platform using artificial intelligence to help assess and develop children's cognitive skills. So the solution's actually already been used by 5,000 children in Mexico and now is being piloted by the Mexican Ministry of Education and is expected to be used by over 21,000 students across 65 countries. Another one of our recent investments is Cloudline. This is a South African startup that operates small-scale airships to deliver medical supplies. While this company will be graduating from the fund later this year, they've already garnered a lot of interest in the open source technology community, with a number of partners actually being very interested in their solution, and they're well on their way to be scaling. This is Statwig. They're based in India, and they're actually using blockchain technology to enhance vaccines and food supply chains, so essential foods, and they help us track food and vaccines from production to delivery. And they have already been piloting their solution with various state governments in India and have tested both use cases for food as well as vaccines. Last but not the least, we have Dymaxion Labs from Argentina. They've developed an AI-enabled geospatial analytics platform, which is helping survey large areas very quickly and give governments and policy institutions insights on making decisions faster. Dymaxion Labs has already been working across countries in Latin America and is also working with various international organizations beyond UNICEF. They've worked with UNDP and the World Bank. And with that, over to you, Ozan. So we do have UNICEF Innovation Fund website, so I do encourage anyone interested in the fund to do start our website at innovationfund.org.
Perfect. So we have a few, maybe one question to bring in. I was involved in MDGs back in the day, and then now we have SDGs. And the one thing that's the SDGs is the public-private partnerships. I think it was number 17, if I'm not mistaken. And I see this UNICEF fund as a really good example in trying to get to a financial startup and innovation ecosystem much directly. And it's really strong suit. How are you planning to scale the UNICEF fund? Are you planning to scale it through government funding? Are you planning to scale through UN funding? Are you going to go like a normal LPs, raise funding from philanthropists? How are you going to scale your impact?
That's a very good question. I think, if something I've learned in the entrepreneurial ecosystem is you don't exactly discriminate. So the truth is we're exploring all these different avenues. The way we've come to this point and the way we are a $30 million fund is because we've raised both public and private capital, and that's what helped us get here. This will continue to help us grow and scale our work, definitely. But I think the partnerships part of this whole ecosystem is super powerful. So I wouldn't discard the idea of partnering with a venture capital firm and doing something slightly different to grow larger funds.
Just during this conversation, during today actually, we were really going through how venture capitalists can actually bring value. And you might want to talk to Semyon Dukach. He has built a different model where he has a VC fund, but some of the proceeds from the fund go to a not-for-profit, which are not doing the similar thing. So this is investing in high-tech, equity, normal VC, but his nonprofit actually works with impact focus, especially migrant and immigrant-led founders. So you guys want to kind of get in touch with him and see if there's anything you can do together. So my role is a connector. It's always been that way, so I'll be very happy to do that connection as well. I'm really happy that you had the pleasure to listen to what's really sincerely near and dear to my heart. Thank you so much for your time. Hope to kind of keep in touch and let you know what happens. Thank you so much.
Definitely, would love to. And yeah, thank you for having us.
You're welcome.